what happens with many salespeople and investors and entrepreneurs is they get stuck on the deal roller coaster, right? They work real hard until they get a deal, and then they close it, and then they go, phew, and then they gotta stop doing anything, and then they get back on that roller coaster and go, okay, I got to do another deal. I got to do another deal. So they're just like running around crazy, right? So the idea with Connectability and Grow is to create systems and scale for an ongoing enterprise with leverage. Because, at the end of the day, why you're being an investor is to create passive income that doesn't require you. Because as soon as you are not there and you stopped doing the deals, then everything stops, right?
Welcome to Real Estate Deal Closers with Anette, Talie, where we focus on the deals. Our guests are real estate closers who will share in detail the whole process from finding a deal to closing it, as well as strategies and tips to help you do the same. Here's your host, Anette Talie.
Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Deal Closers. I am your host, Anette Talie, and my guest today is Karen Briscoe. Welcome, Karen.
Well, thank you for having me. And who doesn't love being a deal closer? I mean, when I heard about that, I was like, I want to know more about this podcast. So thank you for having me as a guest.
I am super excited to have you. I mean, your bio is amazing. And one of my goals with the podcast is to feature successful women in real estate. We love men, but we want to feature more women. So I'm super excited to have you. Let me tell you guys a little bit about Karen. She is the host of the 5-Minute Success podcast, which has ranked number 1 on Overcast, most recommended in the business category. The show has an amazing array of guests who achieve success at high level. Karen is also a frequent guest on other podcasts that focus on entrepreneurial success and motivation, as well as real estate-related topics. She speaks at national and local level on the Best of 5-Minute Success. Further, she has completed the John Maxwell Team Certification Program for coaching, speaking, and training. She is the principal of Huckaby Briscoe Conroy Group, HBC, with Keller Williams. And her group has been recognized by the Wall Street Journal as one of the 250 top realtor teams in the United States. I mean, she has an amazing resume. She has written books, the 5-Minute Success Concept, and the book is called Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day, Secrets of the Top Agent Reveal, and Commit to Get Leads 66-Day Challenge. I mean, I am super excited to talk about the 5 minutes a day because I think a lot of people are sometimes stuck on their business and they need this type of pillars to keep building their business. But let's start and tell me a little bit about you and your personal story. How did you get into real estate?
Well, I actually started out in dirt in the early 80s in Dallas. And I worked for a residential real estate developer, Trammell Crow, and we'd buy land and put it streets to utilities and sell lots to home builders. So I go way back, decades. I met my husband there. We had our 2 children, and his career took us to the Northern Virginia, DC metro region. And we've been here for almost 30 years. And his career actually was the primary breadwinner for the first dozen or so years of raising our children. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to be present, but I also realized that I was called for much more. And so I went back into the workforce and went to work for the Starbucks company at the Nextel and did sales engineering and warehouse offices. Well, found out pretty quickly that once you've seen one sales engineering warehouse office, you've seen them all. And it was also during the tech bust. It's interesting. I feel like I've been doing a lot of failing forward in my career because I really had an opportunity to stay with Nextel, but there's no money in disposition. That is for sure. When you're disposing of assets, there isn't any money in it. And so I had an opportunity to go on the residential side. I had my license. And I have to say, there's this conception that the residential people do all the soft things, the soft skills, of people, relationships, and the hard skills that comes out of the commercial world of negotiation and market knowledge and strategy. What I found, though, is I really am very good at both. And that led to success pretty rapidly. And that led to me becoming partners with, at the time, number 10 in the nation agent. And she passed away in 06, and I took over a business. But it was, well, actually, we became partners 06. She passed away in 08, which happened to be the same month that the financial markets crashed, along with real estate. That was really a challenging time for a lot of people. I had this business that was built on, the heyday, and I had to figure out how to first survive and then go on from there. And I had a lot of muscle memory from the 80s, the savings and loan crisis in Texas. I was in the commercial real estate world then, and so I remembered what happened and what people did who made it out on the other side. And so I made a lot of changes rapidly. One of them was my business partner, Lizzie Conroy, joined me in 09. And she doesn't know any different. She just thinks every deal is hard to do. So she's been a great business partner. But we set about rebuilding and have rebuilt it. And what happened along the way, as often does when people are successful, people want to know how you do it, right? So I kept speaking, being asked to speak and coach and train people. And invariably, I heard over and over again that people felt like they didn't have enough time. That particularly to invest in their personal and business development. And so I said, well, do you have 5 minutes a day? And everybody did. And that was what led to the 5-minute success. I was really wanting to overcome the most common objection that I was hearing, and found later, after writing the book, and now the book is 4 years old, and having the 5-Minute Success podcast, which is 3 years old and 300 episodes, and having lots of conversations with people, I've become a little bit of a productivity time hack expert. That there's reasons, there's scientific that's reasons for why it works, and then of course that has become even more empowering. But that's how I got into real estate. Estate agent today. Our team sells over, we're going to sell over $100 million of real estate this year. We're in a very high dollar average home price. So we actually average $1 million sale is our transaction. So we'll be able to do 100 deals. That some teams, flip a lot of burgers. We flip big burgers. But it means that we have a very sophisticated clientele. But it's definitely more interesting. So we're not so much in the quantity as we are in the high.
Real Estate Deal Closers Special Edition.
Let's get into the special edition of Deal Closers today, because we are going to talk about the 4 core principles that we were discussing earlier today that you have and that you are going to share with my audience. So tell me, what are these core principles that we were talking about earlier?
That came about really kind of happenstance as well. I intended for the book to be different every day, because what I found is entrepreneurs and salespeople, they tend to be a little bit of shiny object squirrel kind of phenomenon. They always want something new and exciting. And that's one reason why I find that many of them don't stay consistently with training and personal business development, because they get bored with it. So I wanted it to be different every day, but my publisher was very adamant that there should be core themes And I was like, okay. Let's just do the core themes. And so I just took a piece of paper out and I drew a Venn diagram. And I said, the first circle is commit to get leads. And that's business development, prospecting, lead generation. And everybody does some form of lead generation. So investors, they're lead generating for usually deals or lead generating for money. Or investor capital, or they're lead generating for talent, for people, right? They're lead generating for those type of opportunities. It's salespeople are lead generating for actual customers, clients. And then the next principle is the consult to sell, and that is taking that deal, that opportunity, and taking it through the transaction, the process, because if you have a lot of opportunities, but you don't get deals closed, right? I mean, that's why you call it deal closers. You don't call it deal openers. You call it deal closer.
And that's what we
I mean,
want. We
because
want deal closers.
right, but there's a lot of process to that, right? There's negotiation strategy. There's market knowledge. There's all sorts of aspects to closing a deal. So that is the consult to sell. Then there's Connectability and grow. And you and I talked about this. What happens with many salespeople and investors and entrepreneurs is they get stuck on the deal roller coaster, right? They work real hard until they get a deal and then they close it and then they go, phew, and then they got to stop doing anything. And then they get back on that roller coaster and go, okay, I got to do another deal. I got to do another deal. So they're just like running around crazy, right? So the idea with Connectability and grow is to create systems and scale for an ongoing enterprise with leverage, because at the end of the day, you really, why you're being an investor is to create passive income that doesn't require you, because as soon as you are not there and you stopped doing the deals, then everything stops, right?
Everything
So
stops.
everything stops as soon as you do the last deal, then that's when everything stops. So there are principles you can put into practice in your business, in your life, that will create this sustainable, ongoing enterprise. And then what I find, and you brought this up, and it's so true, is mindset and motivation component, because not all deals are, sometimes they're challenging, and so that's called success thinking, activities, and vision. So you create the vision of what you want in your business and life, and then you think about how to do it. And some people call that affirmations, and it's a little woo-woo, but if you put it into place, if you actually take the actions to do it, then it becomes reality. So that's why it's success thinking, activities, and vision. It's all of them. And that comes together to be the sweet spot of success. And those components, if in the book, you talked about real estate success in 5 minutes a day, most of the stories and the applications are real estate related and residential, because that's my primary focus. What I found is they really do apply universally. I mean, like I said, I've had over 300 podcast interviews, and I've talked to people in all sorts of professions and entrepreneurial and sales, and they all do, the people who operate at a high level all do those things, and they do them well.
Awesome. I mean, I am like super intrigued because, when you start in real estate, or a lot of people that start investing, is because they want, they want to achieve financial freedom. They want to spend more time with their family. But then you start, investing actively, and you are more busy than before. And then you're like, wait a second, I started this because I wanted to be more time with my family. And then all of a sudden I'm like working weekends, you know? And I know that you have to put the work at the beginning, like you have to create this business. But I am like, I want to get to that part where you are removing yourself from the equation and things keep going. And so let's start with the first principle.
Well, so commit to get leads. There's lots of great strategies on, finding leads. The one that I have found consistently for success is, what I call activity tracking. Because what I find is that a lot of people, may follow the time blocking, where they set a certain amount of time. The challenge with time blocking is once the time goes away or passes, if you haven't done anything, then you're not going to have anything to show for it. When you track your activities, so how many people you contact, and you determine that in advance what you're going to commit to. So that's why it's commit to get it. Then you can get a better reading and understanding on what it takes to actually get a deal. Because I think that's where a lot of people really don't factor in what it's going to take to find the deal and for investors, find the deal and find the money, right? And so if you want to create repeatable systems, then you have to track what you're doing. So however it is that you contact to find your opportunities, you need to have some sort of tracking system for that. So I call that activity blocking, because as opposed to time blocking, because a lot of productivity experts will say, we'll block a certain amount of time. And I find this to be more effective.
Okay, so for example, for an investor, it could be calling brokers to find deals, or it could be if you are trying, doing syndication, you need passive investors, then calling passive investors to get capital, right? So instead of setting like an hour a day, you say like, I need to call 15 people. Instead of that, like 15 people a day or 15 people, like you decide the number. So how do you determine this number though? Because when you say, okay, I'm gonna call for 1 hour, like that's easy, right? You just set the hour and that's it. But when you are saying, okay, I'm gonna commit to do this number of calls, how do you establish this?
Well, I think 5 a day is a great place to start, because I think the other thing I find is people, they say they're going to call 100 people and then they don't, or they do, and then they can't follow up on 100 calls. So then it just goes to, it doesn't make an impact. The thing is the difference between time and a committed to a number is that the time's going to pass whether you actually talk to anybody or not. When you commit to a number, then you know when you've done it. And the beauty is then you know how many people you need to talk to. So like if you find that the sales numbers are, you talk to, if you are cold calling 100 people, like let's say you're going into tax records to find non-occupied properties to see if you can find investors, right? So you reach out to 100 that you don't know, 10 will likely call back or actually talk to you. 3 will meet with you and 1 will do it. So that's the statistics are 100 to 1. So how can you better those numbers, right? Your better numbers are, you could actually meet with 10 people that you already know that are active investors, right? That's one way you could do it, instead of just going out and trying to cold call 100 people. So you'll when you track your numbers, you will get a better understanding of what you need to do in order to achieve the results you want.
Right. And how long do you track? Like how long do you, or is this like it could change, I guess?
Oh, I've been tracking it since a day I entered real estate. 2002, I still have all my tracking. I even had my very first week in the business, and I could go back and tell you which deals came out of those calls.
Amazing.
Yeah, and because that's the beautiful thing about it. You'll start to see patterns of what, people in certain situations turn into business and what doesn't. So then you can create more repeatable. Instead of constantly just shotgunning it, and just going after everything, you start to become purposeful, because it'll become more evident what leads to an actual deal closed and what is just, dead in the water. So that's lots of reasons why. The more you track it, the more you'll know where your deals are coming from. And that is part of creating, your avatar, your ideal investor, or your ideal deal, or your ideal client, or whatever it is you're trying to create. You want to determine what are those aspects to it, so that then when you see it, then it'll be more evident,
Right.
or you
Yeah,
meet that person, right?
absolutely. Yeah, because you're like, if you are talking like on the example that you were saying that you are, calling, 100 people, then when you start hearing the same things, then you know how to react.
Yes, well, and again, you get better conversion. So that's, the consult to sell. I mean, you can come at this in one of two ways, right? You can either call more people, or you can or reach out to more people, and whatever, calling is not always what happens anymore, but the idea of contacting people, you're going to get better at it, and so then your conversion numbers are going to go up, right? You're going to get more deals closed. This information is what's so valuable,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
that's what you glean by keeping track.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So what's next? Once you are tracking these calls, and you're starting to get more leads, then what's the next step?
Well, then it's converting the leads, right? Because if you don't convert the lead, then you don't get a deal closed. There's lots of strategies on negotiation and how to, to actually come to an agreement. There's, I would say, the most common negotiation strategy that I found in terms of pricing is, the classic meet in the middle. I mean, it happens almost so often that it's like, do people not even recognize that that's what they're doing? So there's a book called Negotiate to Win by Jim Thomas, and he's got so many brilliant ideas, but one of them is based on this idea of meeting in the middle. But what you want to do is you want to come close to the middle without coming to the middle, to signal to the other side that you are wanting to work together. And that message, interestingly enough, often will determine what the other side does. So then you can, it helps to, I don't want to say color, but it helps to determine what you'll do next based on what they do. Many people want to hold back because they're like, oh no, if I give it all at the beginning, then I don't have any room left to negotiate. I mean, it's so classic. I'm like, yeah, you don't understand. If you don't even get close enough, then you're not going to have a deal to negotiate at all. And the message is what is important to the other party. The counterpart is what they talk about it in the Harvard Negotiation Project. They don't call it countering. I don't even call it countering anymore. I call it responding. You want to respond, because if you say you're countering, then you're referring in a language that the other person is not
Alert,
not on the
like,
same.
like attacking.
Yeah.
Like, you're countering. It sounds a lot more like you're
more like a duel. Like, you're
Yes,
going to beat it
exactly.
out, right? You're going to fight it out. So you want to create that. And then the other thing along those lines is, in terms of language, is be careful about saying things like, that's our best deal, or a final deal, or lines in sand, and that kind of thing. Because what happens with that kind of language is, well, if you change your mind, then you sound like a fool, right? Yeah, you've closed doors. You can use language like, this is what we can do right now. Why don't you see what you can do? If you could sharpen your pencil and see what you can do, this is what we can do right now. And that keeps the door open.
I like that. This is
because
what we can do
because
right now.
people do change their mind, and I always give them permission to do that, because I find sometimes people say or do things in the heat of negotiations that they later think about, and they go, wow, I wish I would have left that open. And really, this whole idea of, now I know there's the book about the, never split the difference, and, but he was a hostage negotiator, and you don't split people. So I get that. In his world, if you're negotiating for hostages, yeah, we're not splitting the person. But if you're negotiating for a real estate deal, you want to find something in the middle, right? In the Harvard Negotiation Project, they call it the envelope. Everybody's got an envelope of what range they're willing, and it's like the Price is Right rangefinder game, right? Because it's almost always you're talking about money. I mean, invariably. I mean, the first round you're talking about other terms. usually those come to an agreement pretty quickly. Then you're talking about money. So these are some ways you can strategy you can use, and both of those are some resources that people can.
Yeah, I love that because, and I think, when you are buying and you are using a realtor, there is always something that, could, that you can say to your realtor, and then she can relate to the other person in a different way, that you have to be very careful what you say. Like, like even if you know your final number, like sometimes it's not a good idea to tell your realtor, right? Like you have to have it in your mind and tell your realtor, like you said, like this is what I can do right now, and leave the door open for more negotiations, because you don't want to, like you were saying, like you don't want to give your final number at the beginning, but you don't want to be too low either. You don't want to insult the person on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people that do, that they'll offer their best deal in the beginning, and I've seen that. But if you are going into it thinking that you're negotiating, I'm giving you the strategies that most commonly work in negotiations. And many times people say to me things that I know they don't really want me to convey, because if I did, it would kill the deal. So, we're deal closers, not deal killers. So if you're in this business to help people come to an agreement, then you have to help them find how to do that. And people don't do it every day, so they just don't have the skills. But you can build the skills. I mean, they're learned. I mean, I learned how to do it. I actually learned how to do it with my son, who was 2 years old and had nothing to lose. But I learned how to negotiate against him, and so that taught me a lot. But those are a couple of resources if you're wanting to hone up on negotiation strategy.
Absolutely. I mean, negotiation is such an important part of any investment, right? Like even if you're like buying or you're selling, or if you are, it's always part of the equation. Like you have to be good at. I was just talking today to a friend that had an offer, and he offered below market, and he got the inspections, and he wanted to ask for more, and he was also extending the contract, and I was like, don't like make sure that you don't like throw too much at them, because they're gonna say no, and then next, like, right, especially right now when you are in a seller's market, like at least here down in Florida, properties are going like pancakes. It's just crazy.
Well, that's a really good point. You need to know where you are, because if you're in a seller's market and you're a buyer, then it's a different strategy than if you're, in a buyer's market. I mean, that should probably be one of the first things you determine, is where you are in the market cycle. What happens in in sellers markets is buyers have less contingencies and negotiation. In fact, in some ways, it's the other way around. You're trying to figure out how to write an offer that'll get accepted and to keep the deal together. So yes, there's lots of different levels of strategy for negotiations. And that would probably be one of the first things you want to figure out, is which side of the equation you're on.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I also always like to think, if you if you're asking for a discount, or if you're offering less, like if that difference in money, if you're gonna regret it if you lose the deal, right? Like if you're asking for a $5,000 discount and then you lose the deal, are you gonna be okay? And if the answer is no, if you're gonna be devastated, then don't ask for the discount. But if you're gonna be okay and you think, there's gonna be another deal, then by all means, offer less. But if you know that it's a good property, and that if you lose it for that little amount of money that you're trying to negotiate, then don't do it. If you're gonna be able to recover that money in a couple of months, then why risk it?
It also, that's a very good point. And a lot of it depends on, what your perspective is. What I find as well is to think about it in terms of supply and demand, because part of regret is can you replace that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's plenty of supply that you can replace it with, then you're less likely to have regret. If there's less supply in your ability to go out and substitute what you're looking for, you could very well regret it. So you have to look at that cost. You have to look at that opportunity lost as part of the cost, because if that is your time as well, I don't know how long it takes to evaluate a deal in terms of replacement ability, then you may have made up the $5,000 by just calculating that opportunity cost.
Absolutely. And I say that because when I was buying my first property, we were looking for a year, an entire year we were looking, because we were also finding our, like, what we wanted. We looked at so many properties that at that point we knew exactly what we wanted. And when we saw this property, they underpriced it. And so we offered full price. And then it was this Friday night. By Monday, they had like 10 offers. So they picked the highest three and told us to give them our best. And I think it was listed for like 70,000, but we knew it was worth over 100. So we offered 100, but we thought like everybody's gonna offer 100. So we did like 100 and something else, like a little bit more, because a friend of ours, our mentor, asked me that question: if you lose this property, are you gonna be devastated? Then like think like an investor and put $10,000 more. And like it was like hard, to put like $10,000 more, but we got the property, and we
But
were.
you were actually paying what the market was demanding for that, right? I mean, you really weren't overpaying. And I love the idea of a unique number. I often will take the address. So like if it's, 1432, Maple Avenue, then I'll make the offer have that number in it.
Yeah, we use our lucky number, so we
Okay,
always make it like whatever the number we want, and then the last few numbers I make sure that have our lucky numbers, and I think it had worked out. But like you were saying, I wasn't really overpaying because we knew the property was worth that and more. But going from what they wanted, what they listed it at, which was trying to cost like a lot of offers, which did it, like, but we were challenged to look at the value and offer the value because we knew that it was worth that much.
So when you're in a rising market, and this isn't from me, this is from Warren Buffett, but when you're in a rising market, then prices are rising. So there's very little risk in overpaying in a rising market. If you're in a flat or a potentially correcting market, then there's still less risk, okay? Because if no one really knows for sure, but you're either going to buy it on the way up or you're going to buy it on the way down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where buyers start to become pull back is when the market is correcting so fast that they don't know where the bottom is. And for a seller, it's like catching the knife all the way down. And so part of knowing how to make offers and to accept offers is to know where you are in the market cycle. And that is best done by just following supply and demand.
Absolutely. All right. So let's go to the next principle.
Well, so that is the Connectability and Grow. And you mentioned that. You said you feel that as well yourself, right? Because you're realizing that you're working so much in your business of doing deals that you're not working as much on your business. And that is what is going to help create this scale, this ongoing business enterprise that then can operate without you, because as long as it needs you in it, then when you stop doing it, then it's not going to be operating optimally. So connecting to build and grow is creating systems, and that will that will help you. So anything that is done repeatable becomes a system. And the more you can systematize your operations and your procedures, and you can more likely be able to delegate. And then you start realizing your worth, right? Because your time then becomes a valuable commodity. I mean, you're like real estate, right? So the appraiser says that real estate should be used at its highest and best use. So that's what we seek to do with land. Well, we should be seeking to do that with ourselves. So the investor's highest and best use is finding deals and finding the money and doing the deals. So everything else really isn't the investor's highest and best use, unless it's, you love to do it because it's, there's some things people love to do, but I'm not going to say you can't do it. I'm just saying what an investor should be doing is finding deals and doing deals, right?
Right. And
everything else should be systematized.
Right. And sometimes you can start with the stuff that you don't like doing. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Start there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like cleaning the house.
Right. Cleaning the houses. Yes, absolutely. Or bookkeeping. And it's still, when my husband and I got to 5 doors, I said, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. You've got to, and I have a bookkeeper for my business, but we'd always done our own personal. My husband had been doing it. And I was like, that's ridiculous. We have got to because first of all, you're probably missing a lot of deductions because you're not paying attention to them. And he resisted at the beginning, but once we did it, he was like, oh my gosh, you were so right. Because then every time you go to buy the next deal, everything is all set up. The documentation is there.
I think I think it's like so important, but at the same time, it is something that people don't want to spend money until they are making a lot of money, right? And that's what kind of keeps you from delegating to other people. So I have the same thing with me and my business. Like I don't want to start paying somebody to do things until I start making more money, until I feel that I can pay them or I can keep them busy, right? But that keeps moving because like you never feel that way. So I think like you just have to do it. Start doing it, because then you're going to find more time to do more productive stuff that is going to bring you more business.
Well, that's the point. I mean, the bookkeeper's $45 an hour, and I think my dollar average is $500 an hour. I mean, that is not even, comparison. So you have to also look at what's going to take you to the next level, right? Because what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs and investors is they hit a ceiling. And, there's certain places where people hit ceilings, but that ceiling of achievement, what you can do on your own, right? We all are limited, right? In our time and our energy, and what you could do on your own, if you think about it, if you bring in the people that are really good at what they do to take over those things, then you're going to have the time and energy and the space to do more higher and best self things. It really is a mindset. That's why many people stay small. They don't grow because they don't grow themselves. I think it was Jim Rohn said that you'll only achieve success to the level that you personally. So many times with the entrepreneur, they're holding themselves back because they're not releasing those things that they should allow other people to do, so that then they could go to the next level.
Right. And that is one struggle that I have personally. Like I like sometimes it's like, oh, I'm gonna have somebody else do it, but I'm like, oh, just explaining them how to do it is gonna take me twice as much, right? And then you don't wanna. But if you think about it, if it's something that it's gonna be repeated, then you are gonna yes, you're going to waste 4 hours the first time, but then you're going to save 100 hours in the future.
But there are some things that you really like a good bookkeeper, you shouldn't have to do much training, right? I mean, once you turn over your documents, and a good house cleaner, right? I mean, they shouldn't need much training, right? So and I like using contract labor. I mean, I like using, virtual assistants. I like using people for certain, I think something that also often holds people back is like, oh, I can't afford to pay staff. I'm like, well, almost everything can be done on a contract labor basis now. So just pay for the services you need. But I would start with a bookkeeper because it is such a game changer, in terms of you'll have better tracking of your numbers, and you'll see where you can be more effective. And but most small time investors, though, they still want to they still hold on to that. So that's something I think that many people could take that, and put
So,
that into practice. They would go
or,
further.
so you said like the first thing, like get a bookkeeper. Like what were the things that you
That was
outsourced?
what I did first, actually. I mean, I even did that before I hired an executive assistant, because I found that it was so time consuming. And so, yeah, that's what I did first. And then I got an assistant to do all of the routine, you know, for me, it was putting listings in the computer, taking photos, ordering signs, delivering brochures, um, just all of those details that, and then on the other side of it, the transaction coordinator is once you have the contract, going contract to settlement. So there are ways to systematize all of that. But yes, the very first thing I did was get a bookkeeper. So
Awesome.
I highly recommend. But anyhow, the point is there's lots of systems and opportunities for leverage, and just think about what your time is worth, because you are it, and you're only going to grow to the level that you grow. So that's where you get to start with you first.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. All right. So what's the fourth principle?
Well, that's the success thinking, activities, and vision. And just in this one example, right? You have a vision of an ongoing sustainable enterprise. So then you think about how to do it, and then just do the next thing. You don't have to do everything at once, but pick one thing, and then set it into practice. Set up the activities, because what I find often happens with people with vision is that they create the vision board, or they have the January, where they set out their what's going to, what they want to accomplish for the year, and then they forget about it. Or they may do the affirmations in the morning. They may do that, but they often don't put into action the what will make it happen. And I'm a very action oriented person. I do like breaking it down, chunking it down to. I find a year to be too much time, so I do like the quarterly or the 12-week year. I follow that myself,
Oh, I just
and
read that book. It's awesome.
yeah. So anyhow, but it's a great concept, because I do think that planning on an annual basis has its value, but using that as your structure it's just too much time. So the 12-week year is a great resource for that.
And it keeps you focused as well, right? Like you have just, a couple of things that you're trying to accomplish, and you're not like, you don't have like 100 things on your list. So it helps you just focus on that. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, you can chunk it down. And also you'll find that at different quarters, there is a seasonality a lot of times to real estate. Now, there's things that happen like COVID that totally throw all that out the window, but often there is a seasonality. So if you chunk it down into quarters, then you can plan for those seasonal aspects to the business as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I also like, when let's say I go to a conference, and or you take so much away and you don't know where to start. and then you feel overwhelmed, and then you don't do anything. So I was like, okay, just pick one thing, and just do that one. Like, don't get overwhelmed. And then once you're done with that one thing, then you get to the next one. But that's better to do just one thing, implement just one thing, than getting overwhelmed and not doing anything.
Well, and that's actually one of the reasons why the 5 minute success has been so impactful for people that are doing it, is because that is what often happens. It's this tsunami of information, even just books, like reading a real estate book or whatever. People are like, okay, this is great, but I can't do all this right now. I can't apply all this right now. I don't have time to read the whole thing right now. So then they don't do anything. And there is a lot of research associated with, starting small and building up. So the idea of taking one concept, one idea, and implementing it, and so that then you could actually see the benefits of it, you can see the impact of it, and you'll be able to use it in your business and life, instead of, again, taking on this overwhelming amount is oftentimes counterproductive in a lot of ways, because if you go to a training, or you go to any kind of information gathering opportunity, even listen to podcasts, but you don't do anything about it, then it's just it's entertainment, actually, which I'm fine with. I mean, if you want to listen to podcasts for entertainment or read books for entertainment, I mean, certainly that's that's where you get your enjoyment out of. But if you're doing this because you want to build a business and you want to create something that has value, then I think the big purposeful makes a lot more sense.
Absolutely.
Productivity hack.
All right. So let's talk about your productivity hack. What has been that one thing that you've done, that you've implemented in your business, and it had made a big impact?
So, because I'm become kind of a productivity expert with the 5 minute success, I would say that the hack of starting small and building up, because that's where the 5 minutes came into play, was that people were trying to take on too much, and then they again got overwhelmed. So start small and build up. You'll start to experience the benefits of it, and then you may want to do more, which is fine, you can. But if you want to actually implement something and make change, and to build the habits that are sustainable, then I recommend the starting small and building up.
Awesome.
Expert tips.
All right, so now we come to the part of the show where you're going to give me 3 expert tips, and you are going to give me 3 expert tips on how to predict the market trends.
So market trend prediction is something that a lot of investors and people in the real estate space all want to know about. So how do you know where the market is going? So the quote by Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, is he skates to where the market is going. And that's what, as a real estate investor, you want to do. So one of the hacks, or the expert tips, is to really understand supply and demand, because it's like gravity. So how do you know? Well, supply and demand is like gravity. And the way that I find, and I did this in my commercial spaces and also in the residential world, is that you determine based on a 6-month, because that's what most economists and appraisers are going to value real estate based on. So you determine what the demand was. So how many were sold or how many were absorbed, and then you determine what is available in supply. If you're interested in a certain market segment, then you want to be tracking that, because the second tip is the market is the market study. So there are all sorts of predictions and predictors out there, and appraisers are going to do their analysis, but you got to think that they're looking backwards, right? And just like your financial advisor says, past performance is not an indicator of future results. It is still the best indicator because it's the only thing we have. Because when you're investing in real estate, you're looking into the future and you're wanting to determine where it's going. So if you're following a certain market segment and you start to see a trend, like it's been a uber buyer's market and all of a sudden it's just a normal market, that is a trend to be watching, right? You should, as a buyer, be able to get more terms or more negotiations on offer price, that kind of thing. So that's the second one, is market is a market study. And then the third one is what I call New York, New York. And that's based on the Frank Sinatra song, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. So the idea with this is what developers do, is they look for what are key aspects to one market segment that makes it valuable or in demand, and then look for what are those leading indicators in similar market areas. That's how you'll find about emerging markets. So you could get somewhere before everybody else gets there. That's how you find it. So it's New York, New York. So like if you can make it there, you can make it somewhere else. So you have to figure out where you can make it somewhere else that has similar market characteristics. So those are the 3 expert tips on predicting market trends.
Love it. I love it. And I'm going to be doing that. That is very interesting to, obviously the demand and the supply will determine the market, but like tracking it for 6 months, that's the part that I wasn't, I didn't know that, if you start tracking it, then you're going to see if it's going up or down.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I track market segments that I'm actively involved in. I've been tracking them for decades. So, if you're really looking at long-term market trends, but if you're wanting to make a decision about a certain market segment, you can go in and analyze any market segment just based on what those supply and demand will tell you.
Awesome. So, Karen, tell my listeners, where can they find you online?
So for the 5-minute success, it is all the number 5-minute success. And you can find that on the website. You can find it on social media like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And then there's the 5-minute success podcast, which you can find wherever you can find podcasts. The books are all available on the website if you want quantity, but also on Amazon. So the 3 books are Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day, and Commit to Get Leads, 66-Day Challenge, and Flip Time, Love Life. And on the real estate space, you can reach out to me as well, because I love to help people in the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. metro region.
Awesome, Karen. This was really an amazing time with you today. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. And, I'm going to be looking at those books and putting my 5 minutes a day.
Well, thank you. I'm really delighted to be with the Deal Closer community.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
This was Real Estate Deal Closers with Anette Talie, brought to you by Talie Investments. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Our goal is to provide amazing value on your real estate journey. Connect online at www.talieinvestments.com, where you can find this episode and more. Did you like this episode? Subscribe, like, and share.